Hello and welcome to the business of the business. I am your host, JP John Paz. Well, excuse me, co-host JP John Paz for the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is my co-host, the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. Grateful for all of our guests the last few weeks, especially Steve Kern last week, gracing us on the show. But it just means that we have more news to catch up on this week.
Yes, we have a lot to catch up on. Something that really kind of caught my eye was there's some startups, right? Starting again with wrestling. So it's one of those things where it's I don't know, so interesting when you see a startup like AEW many years ago and to see what they've kind of turned into now. What is going on? Is there some startup starting once again?
Well, it's fun to talk about. It might be a whole lot of nothing, but we certainly want to explore it while it's a possibility to learn more. So, two very possible startups and one piece of speculation. So, first, of course, as we know, Scott D'Amore was pushed out, I guess is the best way that we consumed it as a public, the news of TNA wrestling, seemingly when they were about to have their resurgence and rebirth as TNA with a lot of excitement there. What's begun coming out later in terms of the discourse is that D'Amore is a person of means and that he doesn't need an executive job in wrestling to support himself. And he's apparently wealthy, but he'd very much like an executive job in pro wrestling to be involved in. And when you have money, apparently, and you want to have such a job, as we've seen, you can start your promotion or restart a promotion. So where does this all come from? That apparently D'Amore had trademarked the old term Maple Leaf Wrestling, certainly representing Canada. So he already has a promotion that's been somewhat dormant, I guess, while he ran TNA, maybe a little shows here and there, Border City Wrestling. But Maple Leaf Wrestling speaks to all of Canada. And I think, of potential startup ideas and uniqueness to market, I think a really good one. Just the idea that I often used to think about Impact or TNA, especially when they began to struggle in the US, of just saying, just go all in on Canada. Why don't you just become the number one pro wrestling company in Canada rather than a feeling of number 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it may be at different times in the US or North American market. So I can understand their constraints in terms of, access TV. It wouldn't necessarily be that appealing to hear about watching Canadian wrestling, right? Americans are somewhat American centric, but I think it's a really good idea for a startup in terms of, maybe there's certain tax incentives or film incentives to be a company based in Canada. So that's the first thing. The next is Freddie Prinze Jr., who has been talking about a pro wrestling promotion forever, pretty much since we started this podcast, who said that he did a Scooby-Doo sequel just to make the money to have such a promotion, but it's never really gone anywhere. It seems like always there was going to be a top star connected to his promotion, and then all of a sudden that top star signed with WWE or AEW, or maybe wasn't in good health, whatever the circumstance was. But as it's coming out now, he's talking about pitching his wrestling promotion to television stations. So really what he's looking to do is not necessarily start a pro wrestling promotion, but start a televised product that is pro wrestling. Sort of it would be dissimilar from, but not too dissimilar from the concept of a WOW or a Lucha Underground, where maybe if he grows, there would be some touring and so on to start it, but it's not like he's going to start running wrestling shows and then hope for a television deal or figure out, what to do next. This promotion will be viable if he has a deal. And interestingly, the one of the two that he's very positive on, or had been, was having a meeting with Warner Brothers Discovery, who turned it down. not surprisingly, as we could see, well, there some people say that they have part ownership of AEW. That hasn't been publicly confirmed, but they're certainly associated with AEW most prominently. And unless it's sort of like an offshoot from AEW, and we haven't even seen Ring of Honor have its own programming in that universe, I don't know why they would pick up Freddie Prinze Jr.'s sight unseen promotion. So curious to see what the other potential outlet is for him. When you start hearing about people talking about multiple outlets, sometimes it makes me question if you have anything at all, right? We would hear about NWA having, right? I think Billy Corgan had been talking about having their programming on 2 stations, or MLW years ago talking to multiple stations, and sometimes things come to fruition, but often not. So I think Prince will remain a wrestling fan. The market changes in terms of a potential need for a startup, maybe one that's quite unique to the market, but I don't think he'll get off the ground until he has a viable television partner. And he can certainly get meetings, same way that Billy Corgan could get meetings, because it's fun to meet Freddie Prinze Jr. It's fun to meet Billy Corgan, but for people to feel like it's a moneymaker or viable for their network is another story. And finally, and this is just more for fun at this point, but everyone is speculating, okay, Vince McMahon, once he's maybe he's not under it anymore, or once he's not under a no-compete type agreement, if he were to sell all his shares, whatever the particulars would be of that. Phil Schneider had I guess, a joke on X that was good. With Stevenson, Riddle, and Gulak being the names canceled free agents, Vince McMahon is going to have to start UWFI. So I don't think he has designs on doing that, but there continues to be a little bit of chatter that McMahon is hoping to start some sort of business. I wouldn't guess that it would be in wrestling. It's sort of, I think he's very big on his legacy, no matter what it is right now. A lot of people still see him as a good businessman, but anything he's done outside of acquiring WWF basically has been a failure. So I don't think he'll have his own startup, but we're waiting to find out.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know about those big names, Steven Cable Stevenson, excuse me, and Gulak. They might be canceled. So I don't know about those guys. And obviously Riddle, we know about his past as well. But speaking of Riddle, why don't we talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling and maybe a little WWE comparison, a little WWE versus New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think you can make that happen.
Yeah, so WrestleTix has us covered. There happens to be, of course, we have the New Japan show, which we'll focus on mainly on May 11th. So you'll probably have watched that, or at least gotten a final attendance number by the time you hear this. So their show, as of the last count, was 2,648 tickets moved for a setup of 3,034 in a building that can hold about 10,000. But realistically, for Raw, who's coming to the same venue on September 23rd, it's set up for 8,000, and they're actually a drop away from selling out. So 8,000, 9,000 is a reasonable expectation for the building. Although we talk about it a lot with AEW in terms of finding venues that are too large for them, I think Ontario, California, it's outside, sort of on the periphery of number of major markets in California, but it's not in the market directly, and it's not a 20,000 seat building. It's a sub 10,000 seat building. I don't think New Japan had the expectation of selling 10,000 seats. So I think, if they get close, and they're nearing that already, to 3,000 tickets moved, I think given the state of the industry here in the US and the competition, that has to be considered a positive, and that's along the lines of the type of live events that I think they should do, which they are doing now, which is 4 or 5 sort of tentpole events. You have it Northern California, Southern California, maybe Chicago, East Coast, DC. And then you have, well, DC's on the East Coast, but, the Northeast, and then DC. And then you have the Forbidden Door, as long as that continues to hold up and it's being a little bit tested this year, that's not a bad strategy for the U.S. I'm not sure how much it costs them, if it's money making to fly over a number of these talents from Japan, and the opportunity cost if tours are going on in Japan and so on now. But I think of what they can do right now as who they are in the U.S., I think that's the best they can do. Smartly, once you have the talent around and they're available, you could do special meet and greets. That seems to be the thing to do. Most recently, so meet Tanahashi, Takagi, Eddie Kingston, Rocky Romero at the fan event this Friday at the LA Dojo. So good way to, keep interest there, maximize some money in a place that you already have a venue for. For me, which I always joke about, I always like the executive picture. So I would probably get Rocky Romero's and give him a real kudos for being able to be an executive in both New Japan, US, and AEW at the same time. So my hat off, although I'm not wearing one, to him. And again, Forbidden Door, which we talked about the last few, when you say AEW and New Japan is really an accelerant for making an AEW show special. So Belmont Park in Long Island, tickets distributed a little bit over 6,500. The setup is 8,000, and this is happening June 30th, so not too far away. So if this ends up being closer to the final number, I think that's last year, right, was Toronto. I think that's a pretty big step down, but these things tend to get a little bit tiresome. We start seeing a little bit of strain with Ring of Honor, but certainly the peak in Madison Square Garden years ago. Some tech difficulties for them and information difficulties, more in Japan, that they had on a flash disk, and I've lost plenty of them myself over the years, but not with 32,000 club members on it. I think they would take it to live shows and they would make like maybe membership cards for the members, so they wanted to have their information and take it around with them, but not the best way of doing that. And then their website went down as well. At least the one in the US was having some trouble. So a little bit of strain, whatever's going on there. Kadani expressed regret that Japanese promotions have become like American farm systems. From a business standpoint, as some fans have lamented, I think it's a little sad that Japanese promotions and Japanese mats have become like American farms, like baseball and soccer. I think that's a little bit regrettable. That this is our responsibility, though. Kevin Kelly tweeted out, "Stop hiring lame buffoons to run the wrestling business you own. You hired the Mark president. You're responsible for useless Japanese staffers who speak English, and you personally ran off the biggest star." I can't say one way or another about that, but it's quite stunning. I just hope Kevin Kelly's in a good place right now. He seems obviously very angry. There was the controversy in losing his job at AEW, previously had a job in New Japan years ago with Ring of Honor. So it's hard because there's only so many spots, business, and, whatever your financial needs and expectations are, once that's pulled out from you, that's a difficult place to be in. I know that he had tried to start up in Pennsylvania. I think was it the Hamburg Fieldhouse or the other place WWF used to tape. I'm not sure how that's coming along. So I just hope he's well. Seemed like a good guy, but maybe he's experiencing a lot of stress or difficulties right now, at least in terms of what's being fused into the public discourse. Now, John, New Japan announced its Capital Collision show in DC, and in the end of August, but I haven't been able to find tickets on sale for it. And I even went to this the venue, and I don't see them on sale. I'm not sure if you've seen them.
No, nope. Wasn't even aware of that show. Wow, interesting. Hopefully it's still going down.
Yeah, it's been very quiet. Maybe they're waiting till after Forbidden Door, because it'll be 2 months later, but they already announced it, so you'd want to have tickets available. This is, although more timely, John, I think you saw my tweet about it. What's going on with the K1 show in the theater in Madison Square Garden? They were like, it's going to be either late May or late June, and they had a date for each, and now, May is here, moving along, and I haven't heard boo about it one way or another.
Yeah, I remember that picture that they had. It was a cool picture of the like New York City, and they were saying it was coming, which I was guessing to Madison Square Garden, the smaller theater, the Nokia, not Nokia, whatever the Paramount Theater at Madison Square Garden. I thought that's where it was going to be, and there was no announcement or anything.
Yeah, it just seems like I think it's like they would work with locally like Lou Neglia, who does a lot of the kickboxing and MMA shows, sort of like I guess like a local promoter. But you would think you would hear something from now, like before you would announce it. I know K1 has gone through its problems over the years, but it seems like they're having a resurgence. I'd love to go if it's possible. I went to two Glory shows when they had them in New York, one at the
Ooh,
Hammerstein and one at the same venue, which I'll myself also call it the Felt Forum.
awesome.
And those were great. So I'd love to go to K1, but that's another industry right now.
Yes, for sure. I would definitely go to that one as well. Changing gears, though, let's talk a little bit about TNA. And I always find it funny when different websites put this out there because I feel like it's definitely clickbait. Oh, it's the worst pay per view draw of all time. They did the least amount of this, or they only drew this amount of pay per view buys. And then you realize they're only talking about TV pay per views, which I know you have it, but a lot of people don't do that anymore. They prefer streaming. So break it down for me as far as TNA because I felt like I felt for the clickbait headline when I read this on Cultaholic.
So this might be a little bit dated, meaning that I saw some headlines where they were breaking down the rebellion buy rate, and it seemed to maybe be increasing or maybe looking at it a different way. But at least from the Wrestling Observer that Cultaholic got this from, that at the time it had reported that it drew only 500 TV pay-per-view buys, down 83% compared to Hard to Kill, which did 22,400 on TV. Well, Hard to Kill, right, was that like moment. Is that when they became TNA again? I get confused between the names, but
Yep.
there was a lot of momentum behind it. So 22,000 on traditional TV, that's pretty amazing these days. And 500 is sort
Yeah.
of to go down that far just means that Rebellion didn't appeal. It doesn't mean that you lost all the fans, but um, I don't know if it'd be the lowest buy. I heard the GCW show at the Hammerstein was super low via TV buys as well. I mean, which made a lot of sense. They didn't promote that. I'm sure some of those. I guess you'd consider it something different, like those CZW bloodiest garbage crap. Sorry, type
Right.
shows. Like, I mean, I'm sure they do less than 500. I mean, I would guess. I mean, they have to be doing somewhat okay if they keep churning them out. But I would imagine it would just be in very low numbers.
What about some of the shows they got coming up?
So this is on May 18th and 19th. I just grabbed a screenshot from the first of the two tapings, just because it tends to be more at that show. So just to kind of look at that. So about 8-9 days out. So the first and some of the second row that they've moved for that show. Cicero Stadium. So we'll get into MLW success with that. But their show, which is coming up on June 14th and 15th in Cicero, or yes, 14th and 15th. So a little bit of time, but there's still even plenty of first row tickets available. Then on June 28th and 29th, they're in Philly. So looking at the first show there, they've moved some of the first row. So slow there. And then Montreal isn't yet on sale, but I'm always very curious about that, especially having, the not GSP, the former Mountie, what's his name?
Jacques Rougeau?
His partner at the time, who's
Oh,
become,
PCO.
yeah,
PCO.
PCO. Sorry,
Carl
I really
Carl
like
Carl
him.
Willett. Carl Willett, I'm
Yes,
sorry, yep.
I was blanking for a second. So depending on how they utilize him on the show, that could be a good draw. But then just like I'm not sure how it went because it already occurred at the time we're taping this, but May 9th, there was going to be a presence at the Cincinnati Red Games for some TNA wrestlers were going
Yep.
to be there, including Josh Matthews. So I think that just speaks. I know fans are excited about TNA name coming back, and TNA isn't thankfully so much in the discourse anymore, like in terms of like a term. I feel like it was like I mean, into the 2000s, you know, it's like a thing like guy talk or whatever, right? But you don't really, I don't think it's like, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think it's really something that people say much anymore. But for people that recognize it as to what the name means originally, it's kind of like a little bit awkward. You're like at a Cincinnati Reds game with the family, you don't follow wrestling, and then they're like, I don't know how they announce it, but they're like, okay, and the Cincinnati Reds welcome TNA Wrestling. Welcome to the stars from TNA Wrestling. It's just sort of embarrassing. My wife once, I think she heard us talking on the podcast or whatever, she's like, TNA, is that what they sort of like meant it for? So although there's that excitement, you have that trade-off for it still not being like a name that translates well to meetings. You know, they've gotten toy deals and so on, but like it's giving you an extra barrier. So I know that they've gotten a little more momentum from it, but you have to have that trade-off too. So I guess it'll haunt them now forever because they're not going to change their name again.
Right. They're going to be TNA. Now, as far as MLW is concerned, they're kind of very interesting to me anyway, because definitely on my radar because of CMLL. What is going on with MLW? It seems like I know this this team up is doing well for them. It seems like.
Yeah, so May 11th is a date that certainly they have circled. They can take a victory lap on. You know, Cicero Stadium can be, I would say, configured, you know, different ways. When you hear of a sellout, you really have to see a picture to see like if it's a true sellout. But they haven't like opened up more seats or put more seats on sale. So May 11th is sold out. When you go to their sales page, it says it's sold out, everything like that. So MLW is proud to announce that after a 5-year hiatus, the highly anticipated return to Cicero Stadium on May 11th has officially sold out, smashing League's all-time box office gate record. It was a great venue for them, and then like in and around the pandemic, they kept booking it and canceling it a couple of times. This monumental achievement continues MLW's streak of sellout events, with every show in 2024 selling out. That we'd have to look at a little bit. MLW Azteca Lucha, which will stream live and exclusively worldwide on Triller Plus on Saturday, May 11th, sold out a full 2 weeks ahead of taking place, underscoring the anticipation and excitement. So MLW, as we always talk about, like finding its place, like working with a promotion like CMLL, and like focusing on the Hispanic market, but not necessarily just being a lucha promotion, may be the best way to go. You know, running the type of markets that they run as well. So Chicago, New York, Florida, Atlanta, they all have significant Hispanic population. So for the first time, and I had never heard about him coming to even Ring of Honor when they had that deal, or when they began working with AEW, but maybe he was there. You know, they wouldn't necessarily need to announce it. Salvador Luthra Lomeli, the general manager of CMLL, is coming to MLW, and they put out like a graphic about that. Maybe he'll like welcome the fans or talk about the relationship. So I think that's a really good thing for them. Again, you know, if there was a meet and greet, which there's not, that would be something that would be fun to get a picture of for someone like me. I won't be at the show, but that sort of idea. But if they can keep growing this relationship with CMLL, and they did announce another show, which we'll talk about in a moment, that's a good thing. I know CMLL is working with AEW now, and maybe part of Forbidden Door and so on, but they'll always sort of be a little bit of the periphery to AEW as compared to New Japan. And they're somewhat, you know, they're not so ambitious in terms of the US market, right? They have others sort of bring them in, or in terms of the Japanese market and so on. So it's interesting to see what will happen with this. But for MLW, it's nothing new. Over the restart years and the original years, they're always announcing relationships with promotions. Sometimes they hold up for a long time. Sometimes they're fairly short or even don't get off the ground much. But becoming part of the community, MLW will be taking part in the Mexican Family Day on the same day as the show at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. Basically, the stars they're bringing in from CMLL will be present there. And smartly, once you have a sellout, right, you want to give the fans, especially that are there, the chance to buy the tickets while you have the momentum, or if somebody comes and says, "Oh, I want to go to this show," give them the chance, but it's sold out. Give them the chance to buy it for the next show. So MLW will return to Chicago on Saturday, November 9th for Lucha Apocalypto, live from Triller TV Plus from Cicero Stadium. Fans in attendance this Saturday will get first access to tickets. Tickets will go on sale Tuesday, May 14th. As a thank you to Chicago fans, the November return will be a special fan appreciation event with tickets starting at $10. Lucha Apocalypto will feature MLW Fighters and CMLL's grandest luchador matches will be announced. So just looking at some of their other events, so Battle Ride 6, and this is more of a little bit of a joke, they're in center stage. The reserve tickets are sold out. John, if you look at the ticket map, right, it's just a couple rows of seats. So most of it is general admission. Nothing wrong with that, but we can't get to tell too much about how tickets are moving overall. In Blood and Thunder, they've moved most of the first row, and then there's some second row available. Then when you go a little bit further down, their tickets aren't on sale. So that's in St. Petersburg. New York City, Summer of the Beasts, back to the Melrose Ballroom. Front row, tickets are still available. So just to review that, Fury Road and Azteca Lucha are both taped. One is live and one is recorded. May 11th at Cicero Stadium. June 1st in Atlanta, Battle Riot 6. July 12th, Blood and Thunder in St. Petersburg. August 29th in New York, the Melrose Ballroom. And November 9th in Cicero Stadium. So New York, Atlanta, St. Petersburg. So I think that's, for them, that's a good loop, sort of consistency.
Now, as far as NWA is concerned, they seem like they've got a lot of stuff coming up. Obviously, William Patrick Corgan is at the center of it. What is the latest?
So suddenly there's all these territories. So Kenzie Page announced the first and only women to own a territory in the NWA. We will be the standout. So it's called NWA Crossfire, as announced by Corgan. Congrats to the Page sisters and their home territory, Crossfire Wrestling, for becoming the newest territory in the NWA. I wasn't previously familiar with the Page sisters. That's no knock on them. I just was not aware, but I am curious to learn more. I believe that they hold some championships in the NWA, or maybe in related promotions. Just in terms of what's upcoming for the NWA, and we'll look at how the ticket sales are moving. NWA Crockett Cup, which hasn't gotten as much attention this year, I would say. May 18th in Fort Wayne, Texas. NWA Back to the Territories in Knoxville on June 1st. NWA 76 in Philadelphia on August 31st. They have to book Shane Douglas for that show.
Yeah.
Sort of maybe to talk about how the NWA is alive and well now, or something like that. I don't know if it has to be like Hacksaw Jim Duggan finding the TV title in the trash when he was a janitor in the dying days of WCW. I guess also Medusa, right, had found the women's title in the trash in a skit too. So maybe that's overdone. And NWA looks to kill Dothan, which we've been talking about a while, smartly. They announced the show in December because it had so much momentum the first time. So previously, Chicago Fire, which was Corgan's home promotion. I'm not sure how the ticket sales ended up doing as finalized, but on May 3rd, they moved at least like 2.5 ticket rows deep. I think the first time they did a show, it ended up being sold out. They announced a relationship with World Wrestling Council, of course, the longtime Puerto Rican promotion. So the Crockett Cup has moved, depending on the section, between the smaller sections, maybe 6 rows deep, and the bigger sections 2 rows deep. So we have to see how that ends up. Back to the territory. So this is a fun one because it's a fundraiser for the local high school in Knoxville. So we get to see to the dollar how much money was raised. $1,777 thus far. NWA 76 in the 2300 arena. It looks like they've moved about the first row with a little bit of spotting here and there in terms of tickets. The December event in Dothan, it's hard to tell in terms of the setup, at least the first row mostly. So that's the NWA.
Now, as far as NWA is concerned, obviously the reality show might be the most interesting. Not to say the product's not, but to me, and we talked about this before, it might be the most interesting thing they've got coming up. So the Adventures in Carneyland is definitely going to be good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see at least the first episode of it. I saw a little social where it was talking about Corgan saying that no one in his life likes pro wrestling, and that was like a hook for me. I was curious to see what that's all about. I think there'll be some interesting things. We've heard about it for a while. I don't really care about seeing his wedding one way or another. No disrespect to him or his beloved, but that part's not too interesting to me. But it seems like we'll get a fair amount of behind the scenes footage from pro wrestling, at least in terms of, when a reality show would be set up. And of course, I'd imagine, has final control over the content. So we won't see like an expose, but we might see some drama as would be set up in a show like this. Unfortunately, and we've been talking about it for a while, it seemed like it would be a fit for like the CW, but it's just going to be streaming on their app.
Yeah. Now, really, really interesting news to me. GCW, Game Changer Wrestling, going to freaking Hawaii. What is going on here? This is awesome.
So we got a clue about this, which we talked on the show a couple of weeks ago, where Brett Lauderdale, of course, the owner of GCW and frequent guest on the show, had tweeted out, like, do I know anyone or something similar in Hawaii? Do I know anyone in Salt Lake City? And do I know anyone maybe in Montana? I forgot what the third place was. So most interestingly going on for GCW is what's just recently been announced, where they'll be in Hawaii. I think Fightful had said that they'd be in the convention center, so November 2nd. Interesting that it's booked so far ahead out, and curious to see like what promoters they're working with on the ground, if we learn that. And also curious to learn like if GCW will be traveling somewhere else to make this make sense, I guess. Often back in the day, you'd see like the promotions coming back from Japan. So we know GCW has been there a while, and Brett had talked about on our show going back to Japan, and I think in venues that might surprise people or more ambitious venues. I mean, Crockett Hall is very special, and it's featured in their photo book, but a little bit of different things there. Then Salt Lake City, August 18th. So a market that's generally underserved by pro wrestling, and one that's like often misunderstood. Not to get too deep into it, but like, everyone sort of stereotypes every city like this place is this place. So obviously people imagine that everyone there is Mormon in a certain way and so on. And I think that would be a false assumption, a certain way or whatever it may be. So curious to see how they do in that market. Always fun to see them getting out there. And I think it's a good idea for them to try some different markets, because as we're going to see, as we've talked about, sometimes when they're doing something consistently, they build and build and it works out well. But sometimes things get a little bit too much in the same market. So May 18th in Philly at the Harrah's Casino, that show was announced pretty late. It was a bit of I would say a WrestleMania, what do you call that?
Hangover?
Hangover, thank you. I was going to say overhang, but that made no sense. John, what do you think, like, being in the market? Like, are people, like, hungry for pro wrestling now in, like, Atlantic City and Philly, or they need a little bit of a break?
I think they need a break for sure. I mean, there was so much going on. There were so many shows, but who knows? Maybe they got to deal with the with Harris, and maybe that was like financially beneficial to them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That would make the most sense. Sort of being a sold show, which isn't uncommon, of course, in casinos. Not that anything that I'm aware of them having done that with, where they run in Atlantic City now. I don't think that is at all. But this could be the case with Harris. But because Brennan always talks about, I don't need to run Philly. People can come to our other markets and so on. But here he's running it it's the Philly market generally, running it after the whole collective thing, and it is struggling thus far. The second row, I could click up to 10 tickets, third row up to 10 tickets based on Eventbrite. So there's that. But what else? So Talia Hall, where they had done a really good gate previously, May 25th, is the first row was sold out, and some like special sections around the venue, like little theater boxes around the venue. But the second row plus, you can look at the Talia Hall events page. You can click up to 6 tickets, which are the maximum for different rows. So we'll have to see how that's doing. Knights of Columbus Hall in Ridgefield Park, obviously a smaller venue, on May 19th. You could still get at least 10 tickets for the front row. So we're starting to see like a little bit of a WrestleMania hangover, generally, I would say. For their Paranoid show in late May, second row and third row, 10 plus tickets available, where you start seeing, something really strong, which isn't surprising, the Tournament of Survival, one of their marquee events. There, the first 6 rows are sold out. So 10th row ringside is available. Cage of Survival is doing fairly well. You always see the second day doesn't do as well as the first, which makes sense, even for deathmatch shows. But the 4th row has 3 tickets available, so that'll be sold out. But the 5th row and beyond has at least 10 tickets available. Their Lights Out show in June has second row available, 10 or more tickets. Hit 'em Up show, second row, 10 or more tickets. Then let's see here. No Sleep, June 28th. This is in Houston. Second row, 10 tickets or more available. That I wouldn't fret about yet, because GCW tends to build momentum as they announce shows and put the more spotlight on it. Then also in Gillies in Dallas, second row, 10 or more tickets remaining. So not the hottest start for GCW in a post. Well, I guess we've been post WrestleMania for a while, and they've done well on some shows, but in terms of going into late May into late June, besides Atlantic City, nothing looking great right now. But we just have to see what ultimately happens.
So they always have great names to their shows. There's no no doubt about it. I love some of the names of the GCW shows. But what's going on with Sukeban? What's going on with that Joshi promotion?
So they're coming next, right? They're in the coolest markets: New York, Miami, now LA. Take place at the Trinity in downtown LA on May 30th. So they're claiming Miami had 2,000 fans in attendance, and 1.3 million more watched live on TikTok and Twitch. 1.3 million watched live on TikTok and Twitch. I'm not sure if it's that sort of thing where you count minute by minute and you add it up together, because I question that.
Right.
But I'd have to see the numbers to know for sure. So it's a 5-match card, which it's unique in that when I went in New York, it was only an hour and a half, which I kind of found a little bit refreshing, because sometimes independent promotions and Sukeban is trying to be something very different, that they're trying to make it up in volume, and it's 2.5 hours, and you're like, when is this going to end? And here you have their street fair, which was a cool little concept where they were, at least in New York, they were giving out. There were some giveaways, some drinks, snacks. There was items for sale, but in a different sort of way than just a fold-out table. And so on, they were nicely designed booths. So it's still an experience. Again, you have these named talents. It's very high profile. You're working with a lot of high profile people. You're getting a lot of PR, but I'm not sure where they're getting to. So it's something to continue to watch, but I think that's just their 3rd show. So it'll take some time, but it seems like a very expensive undertaking.
Now, as far as women of wrestling, WoW, let's keep the woman train rolling. What's going on with WoW lately?
So just to provide some context, if you go to the Women of Wrestling like press page or follow the PR, hear Jeannie Buss talk and so on, a lot of it is like empowerment, empowerment, empowerment. And you're like, okay, the promotion is for women. I know that, Dave McClain had a different life with Glow, and maybe wrestling was, certainly women's wrestling was presented in a different manner, but maybe he's changed and so on. In terms of presenting talent, but then, and we don't know the story yet at all. But the Tonga twins, who share a Twitter X handle, who had been like outside of Jeannie Buss, the Tonga twins would probably get the most press. Not to say that they got so much, but for somebody that gets Google alerts and share them, like I would see their name all the time. But like this dropped seemingly out of nowhere publicly. To our fans, we'll be speaking out soon, but for now, we'll leave it here. To all women who are scared to speak up, we stand for you. You will no longer see us on WOW because we spoke up. You can't do this to good people who sacrifice their family. So evil. Mess with us, you mess with our kids and family, and that's personal. Wait on it. Tonga Twins are now free agents. The marathon continues. Tonga Twins is us. Hashtag FUCK. Wow.
Damn. Interesting. It's heating up at WoW.
So
as far as
sorry,
that,
John.
are you intrigued? Are you interested?
I'm certainly intrigued to hear what's going on. We haven't had as much controversy since Tessa Blanchard was removed from the promotion. So, yeah, really curious. I mean, we've seen like the money that they offer for tryouts and so on. It's not like a full-time living, but it is it's sort of a place to build a character so that it exists in its own world. And, it hasn't been a launch pad for many, but it's something. It's something for exposure. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear all about it. Just not doubting them, but just a tweet that's very vague. We can't really draw conclusions from, but obviously it means that some people are unhappy, whatever's going on.
Now, what's going on with our good, close personal friend David Marquez at United Wrestling?
So David keeps trying. He keeps pushing many different ways, and he's mostly getting there. But a job, right? And I would love to try this, if I wasn't attached, to another career, just because I like this sort of thing. But he is looking for a broadcast national salesperson to sell weekly boxing, pro wrestling, and MMA programming that reaches over 80% of our country. Programming is cleared on 120 over-the-air RSN satellite cable and streaming outlets, including Fox Sports Deportes, Fubo, Estrella TV, Gray, including Gray Telemundo, and Triller TV. So he has these, either they're his own promotions or he works with other promoters outside of wrestling for sure. So to make money, because right now, and it's on their website that they offer, at least the wrestling programming is like barter. You get to traditional, right? Like for wrestling syndication, you get to keep a percentage of the ads. We get some, and hopefully it's worthwhile and everyone's happy. But why not try and make more money while you can? So I don't want to speculate, but I guess I am speculating. I'd assume that this is sort of on a commission basis as opposed to a full-time job. But for those that are interested, you can inquire. Since David did put his information, or at least the information he wants to share for this public listing, I'll give it to people if they want to inquire. David at davidmarquezprod.com. Marquez is Marquez. Or simply text or ring 818-300-6328. That's 818-300-6328. So in something even more ambitious, and I'm not sure what the expectation was about this, but help fuel championship television to broadcast live. So, and we'll have a lot more details on it in a moment, but the idea was that if they can raise $1.5 million, that they'll be able to go not only tape their syndicated programming, but they'll stream live on Triller or wherever. So in 8 days, they raised $1,485. So a little bit behind NWA's Back to the Territory show. So I think sometimes when you're like very ambitious with something like this, that like people are like, it seems like unreasonable. So people who might also give. I think it's also like a misunderstanding. You might have a reach. Like some people might pass through championship wrestling just because it airs late night or they're flipping through or streaming or whatever. But and I don't want to like sound mean, but I don't know if championship wrestling has a lot of fans. People are aware of it, and I respect very much what they're doing. I think it's amazing, but I don't know if you have that sort of groundswell to be able to like raise money like this. But let's talk about this. So help fuel United Wrestling Network to broadcast live. So Marquez had written a personal request for me that will translate into opportunities for pro wrestling performers, staff, production technicians, and others. Thank you for consideration. So this is what they had in the description. For wrestling promoter, crowdfunding is a scary thing for many reasons, but we have decided to start a campaign to finance a special new project. Since the global pandemic days and our limited series, Primetime Live, I've always wanted to return to producing a live broadcast. For a 6-month period, we had a CW network series in development. We had an approved format, budget, and even a premiere date. In the end, we lost the funding and time slot to NXT. From the moment that we received official word from the network that UWN would not appear on the CW, I've gone nonstop pitching the concept to different networks and streamers. Although they have all been interested in distributing wrestling, none of them are interested in funding wrestling. We do have open doors with these providers, but much like our syndication, it will be on a barter and revenue share basis. So, as I talked about. So, with no guaranteed money, we have not been able to pull the trigger and launch a live program. All of our programming is self-funded or advertiser supported. So many of you have supported our projects for 3 decades. You witnessed the regional talent to WrestleMania and becoming elite. I'm personally asking you to donate and help us take destiny into our own hands. Please trust me when I tell you that making this request has not been easy. I felt like it would come off as a charity, but it's a new venture. Think about it as a startup business. The cost of doing a live production is not that much more expensive than recording weekly episodes and broadcasting live would allow our characters and stories to be current, and the best part of being live is the element of a surprise. It is fair for you to be skeptical, but I hope that our Emmy award-winning reputation in television production allows you to believe in our quest. We will continue to move forward and improve our foundation and provide you with excellent entertainment. Again, thank you for consideration, and let's start telling our stories. So, again, like I appreciate the idea and the effort and the enthusiasm and everything like that, but when I checked, I didn't even see, and I could be wrong, on X, like them tweeting out the link for this. So it just seems like somebody's passion, but very unrealistic dream. Although when Cody Rhodes had tweeted out that he wanted Ring of Honor to book a 10,000 seat venue, I said it has to be the right time, the right place, and so on. Or I tweeted under him. If you look up that Twitter exchange with Dave Meltzer, I think I'm the one under that, not exactly part of the conversation. So I can doubt things. I doubted Ric Flair's last match selling out the municipal auditorium. So I could be wrong, but this just doesn't, it just seems like a dream rather than like a realistic expectation. Maybe if you're to say like, help us improve our computer systems and the picture quality will be even clearer, we need to raise $20,000. That's something reasonable. But here it's $1.5 million for a promotion where many people don't have like not enough people, I would guess, don't have a passionate attachment to it. It just doesn't make sense. And David, if you're listening, I'm sure you're very busy with other things, but if you're listening, I don't mean this is a bad thing. It's just an analysis of the situation.
What in the world is going on with our buddy Kevin Kleinrock and Max Republic? I know he's got a lot going on, man. He's super busy.
So, and thankfully, he included us in the tweet. So we're getting the word out there, although we would have anyway. Cinco de Mayo, right, is their time to shine, of course, for Max Republic. For next week, 3 days, 4 cities, thousands of fans, including the 9th sellout in a row with 700 at Agua Caliente Cathedral City. While there was a free lucha show going on in the same small town at the festival. That's awesome. Like, same small town, there's a festival with like a free lucha show, and then the casino has a lucha show at the same time. But unfortunately, Cathedral City, which has been sold out for them 9 times, might be coming to an end. So a really deep article with Kevin's partner at Mass Republic that I wanted to share. It's the article Cathedral City for Perhaps the Final Time by Matt King. A colorful lucha libre mask hanging for sale somewhere may provoke thoughts of wrestling. But the truth is that lucha is much more than just wrestling. Yes, there are body slams, but the form of Mexican wrestling has roots going back to the 1860s. Its impact on Latino culture goes far beyond the ring. For more than a year, Agua Caliente Cathedral City has been hosting Viva la Lucha events, during which a ring is set up in the Agave Caliente Terraza. The next event happened. The Lucha events are run by Mass Republic, a company focusing on the emerging growing market of Lucha Libre beyond the borders of Mexico. During a recent phone interview with Mass Republic founder and CEO Ruben Zamora, he explained how his career in Lucha Libre began. I grew up in LA, my parents were Mexican, and I had two older brothers who didn't like hanging out with me. So my dad would take me to the Olympics. And that's where I first came across lucha. For me, like a lot of other Mexicans, my superheroes were never Spider-Man, Batman, etc. We later moved to San Diego. Right across the border was Tijuana, where they run shows Friday and Saturdays every week. I ended up going all the time. It was awesome because you could go to them, you could touch their arms and pat them and so on. As an adult, Zamora got introduced to the world by chance. I was a police officer in San Diego, and one of the secretaries there knew Rey Mysterio Sr., and she was going to see him wrestle in Tijuana. I hadn't gone in about 10 or 12 years, so I went Sr. He had just opened a new gym, and I hated going to 24-hour fitness. I'd get bored, so I started training with Psychosis and all these new kids who would later become luchadors. I wasn't trying to be a luchador. I was just running around the ring and the ropes, and to me, it was the coolest thing ever. He wound up getting into Lucha Libre business somewhat by accident. This was before social media, before Twitter, Facebook. So if you're a U.S. promoter and you wanted to get a hold of a Mexican luchador, you'd have to call them at home. You had to know their phone number. And if you don't speak Spanish, it's kind of hard to do. If you're Mexican, but you're trying to get to the U.S., you've got to connect with promoters. But if you don't know English, it's kind of hard to do. I spoke English and Spanish. So every time the crew from Tijuana would go somewhere to wrestle, they'd give the promoters my number. So I unofficially became the booker, the agent of Senior, Psychosis, and a lot of the crew from Tijuana. Then other wrestlers started coming to me, and I kind of became that bridge between Mexico and the U.S. He was introduced to his future business partner, Kleinrock, through Conan. Kevin had been involved in American Style Wrestling since he was 15. He did everything from writing reviews, ring announcing, guest timekeeping. He started seeing the writing on the wall, but that there's this great world of luchadors that had never been done right in the U.S. So he was looking again for that type of business. He and I were introduced to Conan, and we got together and put our brains together, came up with Mass Republic. We started off doing live events in San Diego. Now we're into licensing and IP representation. We help luchadors get their work visas and their trademarks, and we're the one-stop shop for all things lucha. We do movies and TV consulting, video games, everything that has to do with lucha. We are in it to have our hands in. We are in it or have our hands in it one way or another. Being authentic Lucha Libre experience to fans is the most important thing. I get goosebumps talking about it. I like sitting back and seeing the kids and how they react. A while back, Agua Caliente reached out to Mass Republic to bring lucha. Our first show we ran, I think we had like 300 chairs. Tickets were $5. We showed up and there was no tickets left. We were trying to buy chairs, who were standing outside in the parking lot. You got to get people outside who couldn't get in. Maybe you should put up some more chairs and get the tickets maybe $20. After the first show, we sat down and had a plan of how the show should run, what else they could do. The audience has consistently grown. The casino has been killer to work with, and the community has come out in ways that we never thought possible. I think now we're doing 750 people and sold out every single time. The support from the community has been beyond what we ever expected, and way more than when we were doing things with bigger stars. I just think it hits home. We bring in luchadors from Mexico, the ones you could see on TV and so on. But as of this writing, Viva la Lucha will be the final show. From what I was told, they have new management come in. They don't want anything that brings in kids. I told them that if you're trying to do these shows for 21 and older, it's not going to work. I'll come back, and you guys can pay us to run the show, but it's not going to be as successful as the whole family atmosphere. We're really bummed about it, but we had a great run, and hopefully in a couple of months, we'll consider bringing it back. So a pretty extensive article. Go check it out.
And finally, the Mount Everest wrestling. What in the world is going on over there in Mount Everest? This is crazy.
So our friends at WrestleMap bringing us the news in Nepal. First time world record holding wrestling event in Mount Everest, 5,644 meters height. I have no deep knowledge of Mount Everest, although I guess I could have looked it up. Like, how high is the actual top? I don't think, unless they have a way of getting up there reasonably, I don't think it's going to be at the top of the mountain, but it's still something very special. Now, from what I understand, this is a women's event, but interestingly, for some reason, there's one men's match, and it's a death match that's has political implications as well. They don't often do this. Um, uh, India and Pakistan, are big time rivals. I guess they're not at war, but they're basically have very bad relations as neighboring countries, and they're going to have a death match on the mountain. So not only the highest match possible, but a really unique match for political implications.
Very intriguing for sure. Man, just one of those things, the head scratch, like Mount Everest wrestling. Wow, it's crazy. But as we wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip Lavie. What do you got?
So follow me on X at Lavie Marg, LAVIE-MARG. Check out my long form articles, especially recent Macho Man book review on linecupjobsearch.com. And on LinkedIn, the business of the business. We're up to 75 members, and really cool surprise this week of somebody joining who I didn't even know was on LinkedIn, and an up-and-coming wrestler with a great family lineage. I'm not going to pronounce his name because by joining a LinkedIn group, I don't think he was looking to be highlighted. But if you join the group, you can see who that is.
Awesome. Nice. I'll have to check that out. Very cool. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next time for a little business of the